Apple doubling down on its privacy position. Its engineers are developing a new security measure that would make it impossible for the government to break locked iPhones. But the FBI says it's a huge overreaction.
The code the judge has directed Apple to write works only on this one phone. And so the idea of it getting out in the wild and working on my phone or your phone, at least the experts tell me, is not a real thing.
Right. The party panel is back. Joanne, Nosuchinsky, Dave Smith, and Mike Baker. Now, Mike, of course, I'm going to come to you first. Doesn't this show how lazy some of these investigators really are, that they're relying so much on technology they've forgotten about other types of intelligence gathering?
They haven't forgotten about other types of intelligence gathering.
Oh.
This is an important part of it. The world changes. So, yes, communications intercepts are a key part of investigations, but they're still doing all that work. This has evolved into a very, as it always does when you're talking about issues related to privacy and security, or you're talking about interrogations, whatever it may be. It becomes a lot of histrionics. And Tim Cook, I applaud his willingness to double down on this and describe this as a cancer, but he's being very disingenuous, and he's using this for purposes that are unclear at this point. Perhaps it's a business model or a plan on his part. Here's the reality of it. The FBI went to, even before this court order became public, the FBI went to Apple and said, here, you take my phone. Here's my phone, as an example.
And a tissue.
And a tissue.
Wipe it off because Lord only knows what's on there.
Here's my phone. The FBI said, you take it, meaning Apple, you keep it on your facility, you create the systems information file, force it on that phone, and then you destroy the systems information file. You keep the phone. We just want the texts.
Yeah.
That's all. You do that. And then, you know what they said? No, this will be a cancer. It's a backdoor on all devices. No, it's not. It's a very simple court order that's been blown up out there in the world because that's what happens.
Who do you think has a better understanding of Apple's technology, Apple or the FBI?
Apple.
Okay, then I trust Apple on this.
No, Apple's not saying they can't do it. Apple knows they can do it.
No, but they're saying that I trust Apple when they say they have to create an entirely new operating system in order to bypass
information file that goes on there, and then they're saying they can destroy it. They're saying we don't even want that. We don't want. Just give us the text.
Yeah.
So apparently Apple's saying, well, we've got security concerns on our campus because maybe if we create this one file for this one phone, we won't be able to keep it secret.
Well, no, because it's different than having some sort of a physical program. So
I don't know. It's tough for me when the FBI is saying the experts are telling us this can't be used for other phones. But the highest expert, who is the CEO of Apple, is very clearly saying this can. Basically,
he doesn't have a dog in the hunt, does he?
Well, look, I think his dog in the hunt is to protect the privacy of his customers.
So does the government.
Yeah,
I mean, so does the government who wants to reverse engineer this technology in order to be able to spy on any other phone in their custody.
You know where all this happens? The warrants, the court system, and the legislation that is passed to allow for the court system and the warrants to work. That's where this all happens. The Bureau went through that whole process for this case, and so the company is telling, no, we don't believe in the legislation, we don't believe in the court system, and we don't believe the executive branch now because the executive branch is backing this as well.
Well, they also don't want to be coerced and bullied into compromising information and spying on the public.
Yeah, look, when you say Apple has its own dog in the fight, okay, that is true. They have their own interests. But I think the FBI does too. And if you look back at the history of the FBI, they have spied on people for very nefarious purposes. I don't just have this idea that, well, they're just the benevolent good guys in government, so we should give them everything. And the point that the great Judge Napolitano made is why, if we're collecting all this metadata anyway, what's the point of that program?
Yeah.
If we can't use this metadata in this one situation, why don't they go to the NSA who has all this stuff?
And here's where the emotive conversation, I'm sorry, Joanne, I know I'm eating into your time. Here's where the emotive conversation takes place. If you study the metadata program, and for a long time, the government was saying it's number and volume of texts. It's not information. But nobody believes that. Everybody here believes my life is so interesting.
Well, that's because that's not true. That's actually because that's not true. And if this metadata there's so much of it, if they're able to collect using some of those secret programs to collect emails and information on people who are suspicious, yes, they absolutely are. That's not true.
I'm going to jump in here. The thing I don't understand is, as libertarians, isn't this what you want? You want the one ruling, the one case, the one warrant for a specific phone, as opposed to blanket surveillance or spying. Isn't this something we should be encouraging, something that the courts have decided?
It actually shows the failure of blanket spying, because that's an intelligence failure that didn't catch Syed and Tashfeen in the first place.
It's always, you know what,
no one wants to admit that.
On this. It always falls on. So you think that metadata program was actually collecting the content of emails and texts? That's what you're saying right now.
Well, what I would say,
you believe that?
Can I I say what
Do I believe that, that the government was collecting a lot more than they admitted to?
No,
Absolutely.
no, that's not the question I asked you.
The government came out and told us they weren't collecting metadata first. Then we found out through Snowden that they were collecting metadata. So yes, I believe the FBI and the CIA are probably doing a lot more than they tell us they are, because for the whole history of those two organizations, they have been.
Well, you know, I don't disagree with Dave in the sense that, yes, of course there are sources and methods and secrets. Oddly enough, in this world, you do need to keep some secrets. I know that shocks some people who believe that we should just know everything. I do also agree with Joanne. I would have assumed that if you pass a legislation and you have a court system in place and you then approve that and you go through and you get the warrant, that that's what people would have wanted. But apparently that doesn't satisfy anybody.
Technology is always going to exceed legislation. And Apple, Google, and everyone else are going to find different ways to encrypt. And your former boss, General Hayden, said we should have more robust encryption. It makes us all safer.
General Hayden reminds me of the great, and he is a great guy, Judge Napolitano. He reminds me of Soros. Once you've gotten into a position of influence and then you don't have to worry about things, you can be as magnanimous and self-righteous as you want to be.
Exactly. That's why you have Diligence LLC. Brought to you by Nabisco. All right. Don't worry. We're all friends and we're going to get along. The party panel returns a little later because PETA wants to